What's up, guys? Mike down here in the dungeon, and today is the day that you've all been waiting for. The Sunday special. And this Sunday special is very special because it's a response video to a lot of the comments that I've been getting. Hold on, let me poof out my beard. This is how I like to do it because then I look like, let me see, I look like a Civil War general. So, I had a lot of comments on the last Sunday special about questions the Bible can't answer, and I had a lot of comments. Most of them I didn't read because if it's more than a sentence, I'm not reading it. I don't have time for that shit. So, thank you for the comments. But if you comment like a big, giant, long paragraph, don't do that. So, I thought, maybe I would go back and rewatch the video because I was like, maybe I said some things that were wrong, or maybe I said it in a way that I didn't mean to. So I went back and listened to the video, and I agree with every single thing that I said. Like, there's nothing in that video that I said that I don't agree with. And if you watch it from the beginning to the end, which most people probably don't, and I don't blame you because it's probably boring to you, but you would get that, okay? And you would understand. I ain't telling you what to believe. I'm telling you to use your brain. That's my thing. I don't give a shit what you believe, okay? I just think that you should use your brain before you formulate these beliefs, okay? Do it from an educated position. Okay. So I don't, I thought, well, I need to sit down and I need to take some notes or something and I can maybe try to respond, but I don't need to respond, but I thought I could get a little deeper and maybe, I don't know, piss a few more people off, I guess. So, let's try this. How do I want to start this out? I think, okay. So I'm going to tell you, because you probably haven't watched my other videos like you should have, but that's fine. A little brief history on my experience with the Christian religion so that you understand that I actually have read the book, and parts of it I have read countless times, okay? And that I know a lot more about it than, just most Christians, sadly. So, no, I'm not an expert in any way whatsoever, and you should look up every single thing I'm telling you. Okay, so basically started off, grew up in a very conservative Christian church, Christian family. Went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday. My dad was a preacher. We were very involved in a very conservative denomination of Christianity, okay? We weren't Mennonites, but we were close. Not really, but we weren't that conservative, but we were very conservative, okay? I'm talking like no dancing, no drinking, no smoking, all that, right? Very conservative. I went to college and kind of didn't really do anything, didn't care, honestly, while I was at college. And to come back, get re-involved in the church and the same type church denomination. And then, I'm not like, I'm just a guy sitting in the pew. Pause. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm not just sitting in the pew, right? I'm actively involved in the church. I'm teaching classes sometimes, not all the time. We had a rotation thing where, so I'm teaching classes, and I had been before I went to college. After I came back, doing all the stuff in the church, like a deacon would do. I wasn't a deacon, but that type of things. And then after I got divorced, I fell off and I got into other religious things, like New Age stuff, not New Age Christianity, but mysticism, stuff like that. Then I came back to Christianity through apologetics, and so I learned all of the apologetics answers to all of these questions, and I was thoroughly convinced. And I was a Christian, but I was like I really was, and I had all the answers, and I wanted to tell people that I had all the answers, and I was very judgmental, and I was very Christian like you guys. I was probably like you guys, and I would have been like you, commenting on a video and screaming heresy and everything else like you fucking idiots like to do. Then I had sort of a mystical experience. I'm not gonna, not a mystical experience in the sense of I died and came back to life or anything, but I had some shit happen, and then I became a loving Christian, and I was the loving Christian, and I was I still had the same type of, I was still in the same environment, but I was oh, peace and love, and God is love. God loves everybody. Even if you're a sinner, God loves everybody, right? So I was not the conservative Christian anymore. I was the loving Christian. Those aren't the same. But anyway, then I kept digging, and I kept digging, because this is a subject that I'm very interested in. Actually interested in, not because I want to be right. And it started out because I wanted to be right, but I think it's a interesting subject. Okay? And then I worked my way out of Christianity to where I am now. So I have some experience with the Bible and with Christianity and with theology. And so now we're going to get into why you guys are all wrong from my point of view, and from history's point of view. But let's just go, okay? So I'm going to make another video, a real world video, part 2. In the first one, I kind of covered what it is, the real world from the sense of the physical, from the ape, from the caveman, right? It's all me moving through space and that kind of a thing, right? That's my world, the real world, right? But in the way that we function is we kind of have two worlds, right? So we have that first physical world, and believe me, this is all going to tie together. We have this first physical world, me, the ape man, or the cave. I like caveman better. Me, the caveman, is one level, but then there's another sort of, I don't know if it's a consciousness thing or whatever, but it's the agreed upon stuff, concepts, okay? For example, money would be one, right? So everybody knows that a dollar bill is a piece of paper, but we all agree that the dollar bill has a certain monetary value, okay? So that's the difference between reality and a concept. Concept is something that isn't real, but it's still important in how we function in everyday life. Okay, so another example would be the Constitution of the United States is a physical thing. That's a physical thing. Okay, you can go and see it or whatever. It's a physical document that you can touch. But the United States of America is not a physical thing. It's a concept. It's an agreed upon thing, right? You could say, oh, well, the United States has borders, okay? And you would be wrong, because if you went to the border, there's not a line there. There's no line there. Now, the southern border has a fence, right? Okay, I get it, right? But if you went there, right, to the border, there's not it's not on a map. There's not a physical line barrier there, okay? So it's kind of it's a concept. It's an agreed upon thing, okay? And that's how we live our lives, real world and concepts. So what the hell does that have to do with anything that I'm talking about on this glorious Holy Sunday? Well, theology is the concept, okay? The Bible is the real thing. The Bible is the book, you can touch it, okay? And it's a real thing. Theology is the concept. So it's the agreed upon thing. Now, everybody has their own agreed upon group, okay? That's your doctrine, okay, that you get from your theology, okay? So then I heard a guy today say there's 45,000 denominations. That seems like a really high number. I don't know if it's that high, but obviously there's a lot of denominations. So and every one of them have a different, I wouldn't say they have a different core doctrine, but there's an obvious reason why there's that many. They differ in some way. Okay, so they all interpret the Bible, the physical thing, they extrapolate out of it this concept to form their different denomination. Okay, so if you're a Catholic, you believe, whatever interpretation of the Bible that the Catholics believe. And I know some about that, but that's not the point. The point is that there's a difference between the physical thing and the concept. So theology is a concept. And I know a lot about theology. And theology is what kept me in the Christian faith. Okay? Now, with the theology comes like the apologetics. Okay? So apologetics is sort of how you defend your theology. Okay, but there is a big problem with apologetics, a huge problem intellectually with apologetics, because apologetics start with the goal and then they gather information that supports that end stated goal. Okay, and that's not how you do science. Like, that's not how you do debate. That's not how you arrive at truth. You can't arrive at truth when you already know the answer. No, that's not how you do it. The way that you arrive at truth is you gather everything together, right? And then you can, it's like a science. It's sort of like science. Not like chemistry in a lab, but it's like you have all of these different bits of information that come together to give you what is true. You don't assume the truth and then find all the information that gets you to the truth. It's not like a cake recipe. Like, I know at the end of this I know that I need a cake, so then I need all of these ingredients to make a cake. It's not like that. It's almost like I need a human, and then what do I get? Or like, let me rephrase that. That would be the wrong way to do it. It would be like I take all of this stuff out, and then I arrive at a human. I don't know. That's a terrible fucking example. But, the apologetic problem is that they're just looking for information to back up what they already believe. And that's not how any intellectual work is done. It's just not. And nobody takes apologists seriously, because that's what they do. If you look at somebody that's doing that, you're kind of like a joke. Like, you're kind of a joke, right? That's not how you... it's like you're being dishonest, right? And your arguments are all bullshit. They're all bullshit. So, there's the theology, right? The concepts, and then there's the real thing. So the real thing. Let's get into the real thing, because all of this comes from the real thing, right? If there was no Bible, there would be no Christianity. Okay. The archaeological evidence, the history of the book. Most people don't know it. And this is what got me out of Christianity, was the history of the book. The real, level real. Not level concept, level real is what got me out of it. Okay? Take, for example, like the Greco-Roman, like, gods and stuff, right? So, like, we all know these stories of, like, Zeus and Apollo and Hercules and all these different stories of these gods, but the gods aren't real. And that's kind of like theology. We all know the stories, but the stuff to back them up isn't real. Okay? It's not real. There's no evidence of any of this stuff. There's no evidence of obviously there's no evidence of Adam and Eve. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of a biblical worldwide flood. There's no evidence of the ark. There's no evidence, first of all, that any of that makes sense. There's no evidence of Abraham, Isaac, Joseph. There's very, very little, if almost no evidence of David. Okay, like there's no evidence of an Exodus, but there is evidence that suggests that no Moses. There's no evidence for that, but there is evidence to say that these books were written during and after the time of the Jewish exile, okay, as a origin story for the Hebrews, the Israelites. This is an origin story of the Israelites. Almost every single culture around the world, ancient culture, has an origin story. Okay? All of them. Like the Sumerian origin story, the Norse have origin stories. They have origin stories in the Orient. There's Moana. Have you ever watched Moana? There's origin stories for all peoples. The Native Americans, the first peoples, they had origin stories of how they got here. This is an origin story. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's not, none of it happened. It's an origin story. It's a story about these people, okay? The Old Testament is really, really easy to just debunk, okay? Doesn't mean it's not important. Never said it wasn't important. It's as important as all the other origin stories, okay? So that one, we can debunk it pretty easily. The New Testament, however, is a little bit trickier. It's a bit trickier. And because it's the New Testament, this is what all Christianity hinges on. So there's basically two ways of looking at it, okay? Either you believe that the letters in the New Testament are reliable, or you believe that they're not reliable, okay? If you believe that they are reliable, and you also believe in miracles or the supernatural, then you have every right to be a Christian and to practice your religion, okay? If you believe that the books are reliable and you believe in the supernatural, okay? Right? I don't believe that they're reliable. And I don't believe that they're reliable from a historical perspective. See, I love history. History is like my favorite thing. It's my favorite. It always was. I always got the best grades in history classes. Everybody always wanted to copy off me. I could have been a historian in another life. I love history, especially like war history, but I just love history in general. I love it. So that's one of the things about the Bible, is like learning the history of the Bible and learning the actual history of the Hebrews, or at least what we think we know, the actual history of these documents. It's really, really interesting. Okay, so when you look at the history, we don't have any, I'm strictly talking about the New Testament, we don't have any originals of any of the writings of the New Testament. None. We don't even have any copies of the originals. What we do have are some copies that we think that we can date back to around 60 to 70 AD. Okay? That's a pretty generous guess to when we think that the originals may have been written. However, we don't have those originals. We don't even have copies of the originals. What we do have are heavily altered versions of copies of the originals. Okay? We have texts in the New Testament that most people think are attributed to Paul that are forgeries, that are known forgeries to scholars. There are many books in the New Testament that have names ascribed to them, like 1st and 2nd Peter, that weren't written by Peter. Nobody believes they were written by Peter. Okay, but you didn't know that. Okay? Mark is the earliest gospel. Okay? And the earliest copies of Mark that we have, by earliest I mean it was the first one written. And the earliest copies that we have don't even have a resurrection story. Okay? They don't. And the Mark that we do have doesn't even have a ascension story. Okay? Everybody knows, if you know anything, that the last bit of Mark is a later addition. You could probably go to your Bible right now and look it up. There are contradictions between the Gospels. Okay? None of the people that wrote the Gospels were eyewitnesses in the time of Christ. They weren't. They compiled what other people had told them and wrote it down. Okay? So, Acts, completely unreliable. The book of Acts, it's completely unreliable. It's a fiction. Okay? And so the problem is that despite the amount of documents we do have, because we do have a lot of documents regarding the New Testament, none of them are original. None of them are copies of copies of copies of originals. We're talking, the earliest document that we have is like 150 years after Christ died. 150 years is a long time, especially back then. Okay, we have this false idea that when we look back in history that it was just like, for some reason, like time becomes shorter. No, if anything, it's longer. They didn't have a printing press back then. Okay, everything had to be handwritten. Okay, word of like the news. It's not like today, right? Today everything is fast, super fast, right? Back then it wasn't like that at all. Everything was slower, so it even made it even longer. So 100 years back then would have even been even longer than 100 years now. Think back to 100 years ago. This is recorded in 2025, 1925. That was a long fucking time ago. It was a long, people were still riding horses in 1925. Okay, now there were cars. I'm not an idiot, but not everybody could afford a vehicle. Okay, people were still riding horses and shit. Hell, we got Amish people still riding horses and shit, but that's a whole different thing. But they had the printing press in 1925, right? They had newspapers just like we have newspapers now. They didn't have nothing back in the first century. We don't have anything at all from around Jesus' time. So, my skeptical mind, because I'm not completely opposed to the supernatural, although my view on someone resurrecting from the dead is about like my chance of winning the lottery, right? If I go and buy a lottery ticket and then I go around like trying to convince everyone that I have the winning lottery ticket, people will think I'm freaking nuts, okay? So the chances of someone raising from the dead are so freaking minuscule that you really can't even believe it. You could allow for it to happen, but it's not like you for sure think that happened. Like you would be nuts almost to believe that, right? Of course, unless you think that these documents are reliable. Okay. Which I don't. I don't think they're reliable. That's why I don't believe it. Okay? Now, do I think that the people that wrote them are terrible awfuls and that they are just liars? No, I think that they may have believed it. Okay? But I don't. I don't believe it. I don't believe what they wrote. A lot of what they wrote mirrors a lot of the culture that they grew up in. You have to understand that the people that wrote this, they're growing up in a Greco-Roman culture, because Rome is the occupying force of the day, okay, and the Greeks before that. So you have to understand that intertwined in their daily lives and their culture are Greek and Roman gods. And there's a lot of similarities between the Greek and Roman gods and Jesus, the stories about Jesus, particular things that happened during Jesus's life. For example, being born of a virgin, okay? Things like that aren't, what do I say? Well, they're not verifiable, and they sound a lot like myths, right? Like Greek and Roman mythology. There's people that believe that the New Testament is simply that it's Greek literature, okay? Sort of a counter to the other Greek literature at the time. And I believe I'm in a course right now where I think he's going to try to end up making the point that a lot of Paul's writings, the ones that we could even attribute to Paul, or whoever Paul is, if he even existed, or let me say if he was even a real person, like if that was his real name, could have been a response to the early Christian agnostic movement. That was more of like a mystical type experience, like not a physical, but a how do you say, read the Gospel of Thomas, for example, and you'll kind of get, it's not really Gnostic, but you'll kind of understand like that when Jesus talks about the Son of God or sons of God, that he's not specifically referring to himself as maybe the only Son of God or a unique Son of God. Okay, so this, anyway, that's probably a topic for another video, but what else can I get into real quick? Yeah, that's probably enough for now. I had something else, but it slipped my mind. But yeah, so, you know, I know all the apologetic arguments, okay, but they're not good. They're not good. They're not intellectual. You know, if you're an apologist and you think you're an intellectual, you need to go back to school. You know, I know the arguments and I reject them because I think they're false. I think they're wrong. The history, to me, it's the history that got me. Okay, the history of the text itself that got me. Now, if you are a Christian, be a Christian. I don't give a shit. Be a Christian. You can be in a cult. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that until they outlaw it, which they won't. They won't outlaw Christianity in this country. Good Lord, it won't be a country. You know, if that ever happens, it wouldn't be a country at that point, right? Because it would be absolute insanity. But I hope that people grow out of it eventually. I think I've got a theory. Oh, that's what it was. I've got a theory that well, I forgot my first one, but I've got a theory that theology as such, and I don't mean just Christian theology, but all theology and moral foundation type thing, could be a modern sort of rite of passage. We don't really have rites of passage in the world anymore, certainly not in the Western culture. And I wonder if we shouldn't view religious adherence as a sort of rite of passage from immaturity to maturity. I don't know. I've been playing with that in my head for quite some time, and I have yet to really sit down and kind of articulate it out. But I have a theory about that. Yeah, so that's enough for this video. Anyway, you know, I stand by everything I said, and you guys that like to fight in the comments, you're more than welcome to comment, but I think you're just ignorant, really. But you have the right to be ignorant. You have the right to be ignorant. You have the right to be fooled. You have the right to still be plugged into the matrix. You don't have to unplug yourself. You can, you know, you don't have to. You know, if it makes you feel good, this is what I was talking about, rite of passage. And you know, if there may be some utility to believing this, but it shouldn't be where you shouldn't just stop there, okay? Maybe there's some utility to believing this to get you to another place, right? Perhaps there's some utility in it, but that'll be for another video.